Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. I'm Elijah. I'm 52 now, divorced for 15 years. I found out my ex-wife, had been cheating on me for 2 years with her friend. That betrayal gutted me. We had 3 kids together, Maya, now 26, Julian, 23, and Adeline, 21. When I think back to those days, it still stings. Not the divorce itself. I've made peace with that, but the way it all unfolded. I always thought I was a decent man. Not perfect, sure, but solid where it counted. I worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, food on the table, clothes on our kids' backs. We weren't rolling in money, but we weren't starving either. She stayed home with the children while I did what I could to support us. I thought that was fair. She took care of the home, the kids, the day-to-day, while I took care of everything else. That's how I saw it. That's how we had agreed to do it. Or so I believed. But it turns out she didn't see it that way. She said I didn't give them enough time, that I didn't make enough money, that I was absent. And for a long time, I carried that guilt. I walked around with it like a stone in my chest, thinking maybe she was right. Maybe I had failed at both being a husband and a father. But over the years, after stepping back, I realized something. I was in my late 20s and early 30s back then. I didn't come from money. Everything we had, I earned with sweat and long nights. I wasn't incompetent. I was holding the damn ship together. If anything, I was doing pretty damn well, given the odds. Still, the marriage had grown cold. I didn't see it at first. You don't, when you're drowning in bills and just trying to survive. But one day, I saw it clearly. I came home early from my second job, just walked through the door at the wrong time, or maybe the right one, depending on how you look at it. She was with him, her friend, someone I had seen around our house more times than I could count. I remember standing there, my keys still in my hand. I didn't even say anything at first. I just watched. It was like time froze. She saw me, and for a second, she looked guilty, but then it was gone, replaced with this hard, defensive look. We fought. Of course we did. I asked how long. She crossed her arms. Does it matter? How long? I asked again. She looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of lying to my face. Of tucking our kids into bed, kissing me goodnight, while sneaking around with him. Why? I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. Why him? Why this? Her answer wasn't what I expected. She didn't apologize. Didn't cry. She said, "You were never around. You buried yourself in work and expected me to carry everything else." I was lonely. It was like a punch to the gut. Not just because of what she said, but because she said it like it justified everything. I was out there breaking my back for this family. I said, everything I did for you and the kids. She shrugged. Shrugged. I needed more, she said. And you weren't giving it. There was no remorse in her voice. No shame. Just this cold detachment. There was no coming back from that. No reconciliation. No counseling. No sitting down to talk it through. I filed for divorce almost immediately. And, surprisingly, she didn't fight it. I think she was too caught up in the fantasy of her new life with her affair partner to care. At the time, it felt like she was willing to burn everything down for him. Our marriage, our family, the years we'd spent building a life together. But that dream of hers didn't last long. About 6 months after I filed for divorce, he dumped her. Just like that. Left her single. And in many ways, broken. She tried to come back to me. I remember the day clearly. She showed up at my door, unexpected, looking smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Like the fire she had before was gone. Her voice was quiet. "Elijah," she said, "I made a mistake." I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Took you 6 months to realize that." She looked down at her hands. I thought I knew what I wanted. I was wrong. I didn't yell. Didn't say anything cruel. I just nodded once and said, "I'm not the same man you walked away from. Whatever you're looking for, it's not here anymore." She wanted to talk more. Said things like, "We have history, and maybe we can start fresh." But I was done. Whatever was between us had been shattered beyond repair. I had already begun the process of checking out emotionally the moment I saw her with him. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. And that kind of betrayal doesn't leave space for rebuilding. So I focused on the one thing that mattered, our kids. I stayed in their lives as much as I could. I made it clear that even though their mother and I couldn't make it work, they were still my world. I didn't want the divorce to scar them any more than it already had. We had joint custody. I paid my share of child support until each of them was able to stand on their own. Beyond that, I helped where I could, contributed to college tuition, made sure they had what they needed. I remember one summer, I took them on a trip to the Grand Canyon. Just the 4 of us. It was the first time in years that I saw them all relaxed, smiling. It felt like healing. Weekends, Holidays, they often spent those with me. I kept my doors open, my phone on. Even when things were tense with their mom, I never let it spill into my relationship with them. I kept my thoughts about her to myself. That wasn't their burden to carry. Over time, we built something strong. Not perfect, but real. A bond that made me hopeful that maybe, just maybe, they'd grow up without letting the bitterness of the past define them. Then, about 5 years after the divorce, I met my current wife. She's everything I never knew I needed. Kind, grounded, supportive. A fantastic mother. We have 2 kids together now, both in elementary school. My life began to settle into something good, something peaceful. Balancing the new family with my responsibilities to Maya, Julian, and Adeline wasn't always easy. There were times I worried about whether I was giving everyone enough of myself. But I did the best I could. I was present. I made the effort. Life kept moving forward. The kids grew up. And though the communication between my ex and me continued for matters involving the kids, it gradually lessened. Once Maya, Julian, and Adeline hit their late teens and early 20s, that connection thinned even more. Just the occasional message about a tuition fee or a birthday plan. Otherwise, nothing. But now, it's all coming to a head in ways I never anticipated. My ex-wife stayed single after the divorce. She dated a little, nothing serious, at least from what I heard through the kids. Then about a year ago, she collapsed at work. I didn't even hear about it right away. Maya called me a couple days later. She kept her voice calm, but I could tell something was off. "Dad," she said, "Mom collapsed at her workplace. They rushed her to the hospital." I remember going still, unsure how to respond. "Is she okay?" "She has a heart issue," Maya explained. "Not too severe," they said. "She's on medication now." I didn't say much after that. I offered the usual. "Keep me posted, let me know if you need anything." But honestly, I didn't pay it too much attention. We were long past the stage of caring deeply about each other's lives. At that point, I saw her more as the mother of my kids than someone I had ever loved. But then, earlier this year, things changed. Radically. Maya called me again, this time in a panic. "Dad, Mom had a stroke. It's bad. She's in the hospital again." I sat down immediately. "How bad is it?" "She's paralyzed from the waist down," Maya said. Her voice cracked. "They're not sure if she'll fully recover." My heart sank, not for my ex, but for my children. No matter what she did to me, she was still their mother. And this was going to change everything for them. I told my wife about it, and she came with me to the hospital. When I saw my ex, I barely recognized her. She looked small, defeated. Wires, machines, pale skin. Whatever anger I had once felt was gone. I didn't want this for her. I had cursed her, sure. In the dark days, after the betrayal, I had said and thought terrible things. But I never wanted this. I prayed for her recovery. For my children's sake, more than hers. Not long after that, Maya called me again. "Dad, we need help." She didn't dance around it. "It's about money," she said. "Her insurance won't cover everything. Her savings are gone. We don't know how we're going to manage. Please think of it as a favor to your kids." Without thinking too much, I wrote a check. A big one. It wiped out a chunk of our savings, but I didn't hesitate. Whatever she'd done in the past, this wasn't about her anymore. This was about stability for my kids. Thankfully, the treatment helped. She recovered faster than expected. She was discharged from the hospital and started physio. Still, she was far from normal. She couldn't walk, couldn't manage on her own. She needed someone to help her with everything. Bathing, getting into the car, using the toilet. At first, the kids took turns. Maya, Julian, and Adeline worked out a schedule. They were there for her every day. But now, they're overwhelmed. They have their own lives now. Jobs, responsibilities, relationships. And this burden they've been carrying is beginning to break them. Maya, my eldest, got married last year. A beautiful wedding. I walked her down the aisle, watched her cry during the vows, and for a moment, I felt like I had done something right in this life. But now, she can barely spend time with her husband. Her mother's condition, constant, demanding, has consumed her days and nights. Julian just started his career. A fresh opportunity at a decent company. I was proud of him, but the stress is eating him alive. He's doing the bare minimum just to hang on to his job. When we spoke last, his voice was flat, tired, worn out. Adeline, the youngest, graduated a few months back. She should be out there, building a future, chasing dreams. But she never got to take up a full-time job. Instead, she's juggling part-time gigs, anything to scrape by, because someone needs to be home, someone needs to help. Their mother can't afford a full-time nurse. She's on disability, and what little savings she had dried up in those early months. The kids? They don't have the money either. They tried. God knows they tried. But their contributions aren't enough to bring in professional help. And I get it. I really do. Their situation is real, and it's painful, and it's not their fault. But what do they expect me to do? Since the stroke, I've written checks, twice. Substantial amounts. Not symbolic gestures. Real money. Enough to get her through urgent care, rehabilitation, medications. I didn't do it begrudgingly. I did it because I care about my kids. Because I didn't want them to see their mother fall through the cracks. But I also have a family of my own now. 2 young kids, still in elementary school. A wife. A home. 10 more years, at least, of school fees, medical bills, extracurriculars. All the unseen costs of raising children. And it's not like I'm sitting on a gold mine. We budget, we plan, we make it work, but we're not flush with cash. I told my kids I cannot keep pitching in financially whenever they want. I'm not their mother's husband anymore. That role ended a long time ago. They didn't take it well. Calls went unanswered. Texts left on read. The tone of our conversations, when they happened at all, turned cold. Passive-aggressive comments started cropping up on social media, on family group chats. Anytime I posted a picture with my wife or our younger kids, I get a sarcastic reply. Must be nice to have time for vacations, or glad someone's family is doing okay. I try to stay patient. I kept reminding myself, they're under pressure. Their mom is sick. They're burning out. But yesterday, I'd had enough. Julian called. No greeting, no pleasantries. You could do more, Dad, he said, his voice sharp, accusatory. You should be doing more. She's our mother. But you've moved on with your perfect little family while we're drowning here. Julian, I said carefully, don't drag me into this. No, you don't, he snapped. You don't get to say that. You come in when it's convenient, drop a check, and disappear. That's not help. That's guilt money. You left us to deal with this. You left her. And now you're acting like it's not your problem. That was it. That last part. You left her, hit a nerve I didn't even know was raw. And I snapped. I said what I had to say. I told Julian, I've already paid my dues. I raised you, supported all 3 of you financially, paid for your education, and fulfilled every legal and moral obligation I had as a father. But your mother? No. We've been divorced for 15 years. I'm not responsible for her anymore. She made her choices, she had her chance, and now she has to live with the consequences. That's how I see it. He didn't argue. He didn't say anything at all. He just hung up. Now, I'm left sitting with it all, this storm of guilt and frustration and exhaustion. I understand their dilemma, I truly do. Watching your mother suffer and trying to balance that with your own life can't be easy. But I'm also not in a place, financially, emotionally, practically, to carry the weight they're trying to put on my shoulders. I thought maybe drawing a line, being assertive, would be the end of it. A final boundary. But I was wrong. After the fallout with Julian, he showed up at my house, with Maya and Adeline in tow. I braced myself, expecting tension. But Julian wasn't bitter about our last conversation. Instead, they had other demands, ones I didn't see coming. It started off like any guilt-ridden conversation. Dad, Maya said, it's just been a lot. We're struggling to manage everything. Rent, work, hospital visits. And now physio appointments, Julian added. Adeline spoke next. It's not just about the money. It's about time. Energy. We've put everything on hold. Our careers. Our relationships. Our lives. They kept going, piling on concern after concern. And to be fair, it wasn't manipulative. They were genuinely overwhelmed. You could hear it in their voices, especially Adeline's, when she said, we didn't sign up for this, but someone had to step in. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I let them finish everything they had to say. And when they were done, I responded calmly. I understand, I said, but I have a family of my own now. 2 young children. A wife. A house to run. I've already helped financially where I could, but I can't commit to anything further. I wish I could do more, but I just can't stretch myself thinner. Adeline looked at me. Her eyes were serious, not angry. And that's when she said it. Dad, you know we 3 have kind of paused our lives to take care of Mom. But it's becoming too much for us. We're hoping you could become the primary caregiver for her. I freaked out. What do you mean by primary caregiver? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my chest was pounding. Maya stepped in without missing a beat. Dad, you're financially stable now. You work just one job. You could easily help on weekends and evenings, just enough to share the load so the 3 of us can get some time back. Time to focus on our own lives. I stared at them, dumbfounded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me, I said slowly, to spend my evenings and weekends nursing my ex-wife? You expect me to leave my wife and my 2 kids at home so I can give your mother a bath and take her to the bathroom? None of them said anything, so I continued, quieter now but firm. Look, I'm sorry your mom's going through this. I really am. And I understand that this is hard on all of you. But she is not my responsibility anymore. We've been divorced for 15 years. I've moved on. I have a family. A life. I paused to look at each of them. You want to help your mother? That's your call. She's your mom. You're adults. But don't come to me expecting me to just slide back into her life like nothing happened. Like we didn't go through everything we did. Maya started crying. Not quiet tears, she was sobbing. Adeline immediately got up and hugged her, giving me a look like I'd just kicked a dog. Like I was some villain because I didn't want to devote my time off to taking care of a woman who cheated on me and walked out of our marriage without so much as a second thought. And if the expectation of me covering the bulk of her medical expenses wasn't already ridiculous, now they wanted this. They wanted me to become her nurse. They don't see it. They don't see the full picture. I have a full-time job. I have a wife. 2 young kids who need me now more than ever. I've already done more than most men would have, considering the history. And yet, it's not enough. It never is. I tried to explain. Again, I get it. You don't have the time. Or the money. And you're overwhelmed. But that doesn't mean I'm the fallback plan. It doesn't mean you can just dump this on me because I happened to be married to her 2 decades ago. The silence that followed was thick. Tense. I looked at them, hoping one of them, any of them, would come to their senses. Instead, Julian leaned back in the chair and shook his head. Come on, dude, he said, voice dripping with judgment. You can't just shy away from your responsibilities. She's your wife, after all. That did it. I snapped. Ex-wife, I said, eyes locked on him. The one who destroyed our marriage. Let's not forget that part. The same woman who cheated on me. I wanted to say more. God, did I want to unload everything I'd been holding back for years. But I stopped myself. I didn't want it to sound like I was doing this out of spite. Because I'm not. I've helped. I've been there, to the extent I could. But they didn't care. They didn't take it well at all. All 3 of them turned on me. Together. It was like watching a jury deliver a verdict. They accused me of abandoning their mother. They called me heartless. Selfish. For what? For choosing my new family over them. I was done explaining myself. I'd said everything that needed to be said, twice over, maybe 3 times, but it was like speaking into the wind. They didn't want clarity. They wanted compliance. Things escalated when my wife, my current wife, found out what was really going on. Up until that point, she had been incredibly patient and supportive. She never once complained when I lent a few grand here and there to help with my ex-wife's medical bills. She knew the situation was miserable. She saw the toll it took on me, and she kept her distance whenever things between me and the older kids got tense. She respected the history, the complicated lines. But this time, when she realized that my children were essentially trying to bully me into taking over full-time care of my ex-wife, she stepped in. She came out of the bedroom, the room right next to the living room where all this had been unfolding for hours, and looked directly at me. What's going on? She asked. It's been hours. You still haven't come to a conclusion? Now, I knew she'd heard everything. That question wasn't curiosity. It was her asking for permission to say what was already on her mind. I looked at her, didn't say much, just gave her a kind of pleading glance, eyes soft, a little exhausted. Puppy eyes, if you will. A silent request to please, just help me out here. I gave her a brief version of it, for formality's sake. They're overwhelmed, I said quietly. They want me to step in, be the primary caregiver. She looked at my kids, then back at me, smiled slightly, more with compassion than warmth. Then she turned to them and said, firm, calm, but unapologetic. We understand you guys. We really do. But your dad has already done his part, for you, and for your mother. Now, he has other obligations, towards us, towards our kids. You're all adults now. We hope you have the maturity to understand that. That was more or less how she said it. Maybe not word for word, but the meaning was clear. The kids didn't take it well. Maya stopped crying and suddenly stiffened. Julian clenched his jaw. Adeline crossed her arms. Please don't interfere, Maya said coldly. This is between us and our dad. Before I could jump in and defuse things, my wife cut in sharply. I have every right to interfere, she said. Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't waver either. Because every penny he gives to your mother comes from my household. That money could have enrolled our kids in swimming lessons. It could have gone to summer camp, to school supplies, to building their future. She took a step forward, her voice laced with years of quiet restraint that had just run out. I let him part with that money out of humanity, not obligation. But now I see you're not just asking. You're exploiting him, financially and emotionally. And I need to stand by him. They didn't take it well. Not at all. Adeline narrowed her eyes and said coldly, You're the reason he won't help. You've manipulated him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This is a woman who has done nothing but support me, who's shown nothing but patience and grace, even in the most awkward family moments. She's the one who's encouraged me to stay in touch with them, to help their mother despite everything. A woman who welcomed them into our home, who remembered every birthday, who quietly stood beside me while I gave away money that could have gone to our children. And yet here they were, painting her as some wicked stepmother from a second-rate fairy tale. That was it for me. That was the final straw. I stood up and looked each of them in the eye. Enough, I said. I will not let any of you disrespect my wife. Maya started to interrupt, but I raised my hand. Don't dare to interrupt me. I've drawn a line. If you can't be civil, if you can't stop trying to guilt me into taking care of your mother, then I will have no choice but to cut you off. They didn't believe me. I could see it in their faces. They thought I was bluffing, that I'd calm down in an hour or two and everything would go back to normal. But then they kept going, accusing, snapping, ganging up on us like we were strangers who'd wronged them instead of the people who had done everything we could. So I followed through. I told them to leave. Out of my house. Now, their faces, I'll never forget them. It was like I'd torn the floor out from under them. Julian's jaw dropped. Adeline shook her head in disbelief. Maya just stared at me, speechless. They couldn't believe I'd do it, that I could turn them away like that. And I know why. It's because until that moment, I had always been there for them. I had only ever shown them love. But enough was enough. I couldn't let them trample my wife's dignity or keep throwing guilt and blame at me like it was my life's job to carry their burden. I cut them off. All three of them. I won't sugarcoat it. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I love them. I always will. They're my children, and that love doesn't just disappear. But I couldn't keep standing there while they attacked the woman I share my life with now. I couldn't let them turn me into a villain just because I wouldn't sacrifice myself for someone I divorced 15 years ago. They want to make me feel guilty, but they cannot force me into a situation I want no part of. Not again. I did what I had to do, to protect my family, to protect myself. I don't know if my children will ever come around. I hope they do. I hope someday they'll see things from my perspective. But I'm not holding my breath for now. I've been focusing on my wife and my younger kids. They need me, and honestly, I need them too. 3 months passed. Then, on my birthday, I got a text from Maya. Just a simple happy birthday, Dad. I stared at it for a while before replying with a single emoticon. A thumbs up. Since then, she's been texting me now and then. Little check-ins, small talk, nothing too deep. At first, I ignored quite a few of her messages. I wasn't ready. Then one day, she apologized. Not for everything, but for being rude to my wife. Her message read, Dad, I'm really sorry for how things went down, especially for the way I stood by while Julian and Adeline disrespected her. I didn't say anything then, and that was wrong. I didn't respond to that part directly. I just acknowledged her with a brief, neutral reply. Since then, our exchanges have been sparse and short, usually one-word responses from me. But they've stayed civil. My wife knows about the messages. She's never once tried to control who I speak to. She just wants peace, like I do. And she understood. Maya, out of the three, has always been the most emotional, the most caring. She wasn't the one who lashed out the most during that blow-up. That was Julian and Adeline. But Maya didn't stop them, either. She stood with them, silently. So I had to cut her off too. Then, about a week ago, I got a message from her again. Dad, can we meet? Not just me, Julian and Adeline want to come too. We'd like to talk. I told her plainly. They need to apologize to my wife before I let anything happen. She replied almost instantly. We understand. We will. My wife was cautious but supportive. She suggested we meet them at a restaurant, neutral ground. If things got messy, we could just walk out. No drama inside our home. That made sense. So we agreed on a place. The day of the meeting, we arrived first. My wife and I sat at a corner booth, quiet, watching the door. A few minutes later, the three of them walked in, nervous, awkward, but clearly prepared to talk. Maya came forward first. Hi, Dad. Hi, she turned to my wife. I mean, hi, Mrs. My wife smiled gently. You can call me by my name. It's okay. Julian and Adeline followed. No hostility this time. Just discomfort, guilt, maybe even a little humility. And then, Julian cleared his throat and said, We're sorry. For what we said. For the way we acted. It wasn't right. Adeline nodded, eyes down. We took it too far. We were overwhelmed. But that doesn't excuse what we said to you both. My wife didn't gloat. She simply nodded and said, Thank you. That means a lot. And that was it. The tension broke like a popped balloon. We sat down. We ordered. We talked. Not about their mother. Not about the past. Just about life. Work. Weather. News. The kids. And things got normal. They spent the first half of the dinner just filling us in on life updates. Safe, surface-level stuff. Julian talked about work. Maya mentioned something about a trip she was planning with her husband, and Adeline shared bits about her part-time gigs. It was pleasant enough, even a little nostalgic. For a moment, I allowed myself to think maybe, just maybe, they'd come around for real. But then I noticed it. Adeline shot Maya a look. One of those subtle, sideways glances with raised brows. It wasn't innocent. Maya glanced at her, then quickly looked away, clearly ignoring it. I caught it. So did my wife. A few minutes later, Julian nudged Maya with his elbow. It wasn't discreet. My wife and I both saw it. She turned to them, her tone calm but firm. "Is there something you need to say?" she asked, eyebrows slightly raised. The table went quiet. Maya fumbled with her napkin, looking like she wanted to disappear. But of course, Adeline, never one to hold back, jumped right in. Let me paraphrase what she said, though the tone and intent are still burned into my memory. "Dad," she began, "we were hoping, well, that you could help us financially again. We understand now that asking you to be the caregiver was too much. That was a mistake, we get it. But maybe you could pitch in with the expenses? We're really struggling to take care of Mom. We need a full-time nurse now. We've done everything we could, but we just can't keep pausing our lives like this." She went on and on about their shifts, their rent, how Maya's marriage was strained, how Julian's boss was on his case, and how Adeline had to turn down a full-time position. All of it spilling out like a carefully rehearsed monologue. Like this dinner had never been about reconciliation. It was just step one of a setup. And while she talked, something inside me shifted. The mask slipped. I saw it for what it was. Ever since I cut them off, not a penny had gone toward their mother from my end. That, right there, was the real problem. They had gambled on guilt, and when that didn't pay off, they pivoted back to cash. The apology? The meeting? The sudden civility? It was a facade. They weren't trying to mend the relationship. They were trying to reopen the wallet. I took a breath, looked straight at Adeline, and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't lend you money anymore." Julian looked like he wanted to jump in, but I kept going. "I'm not a billionaire. I don't have endless reserves of money or time. I have a regular job. I have a mortgage. 2 young kids who'll need financial support for the next decade, at least. A wife who's carried her share and more." I leaned forward slightly. "And I'm still paying off the loan I took for your college tuition," I said, turning toward Julian, then Adeline. "Both of you." Julian didn't take my answer well. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said sharply, "Since you're not giving your time to Mom, the least you could do is pay for the nurse." That hit me like a slap. Not because I hadn't expected it, but because of how casually he said it, like I owed it to them. Like my entire life outside of their mother didn't exist. I wanted to walk out right then and there, but I didn't want to leave things hanging in the middle of a heated moment. That would have felt like abandoning the last shred of civility. I took a breath. "I've already explained where I stand," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This isn't about not caring. It's about boundaries." But that's when the argument flared up. Julian wouldn't let it go. He raised his voice. "You used to help before. You used to lend money. Why stop now? What changed?" I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Maya jumped in, trying, as always, to be the voice of reason. "Dad," she said gently, "you did say you'd help financially. Maybe not commit to a fixed amount, but you were pitching in before our last meeting. What changed now?" I nodded slowly, looked directly at her, and replied in the same calm tone she had used. "Honey, first of all, I never committed. I said I would pitch in when feasible. That's a big difference. Besides, I have no obligations left for your mother." They didn't respond right away. The air felt thick, like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the space between us. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was bitter, disappointed. I kept going, not to convince them, but to make sure they heard me clearly. "You can't feel entitled to a handout. You can't expect me to keep giving just because I once did. That's not how this works." More silence. No one looked at me. Julian stared at his phone. Adeline chewed the inside of her cheek. Maya gave me the kind of look that breaks you just a little. Sad, tired, but still clinging to hope that I might fold. I didn't. I repeated myself one final time, firm but composed. "My obligations toward your mother ended with our marriage. I have a new family now. A wife, 2 young kids. They are my priority." None of them said a word. No pushback this time. No arguments. Just that bitter, choking quiet. I called for the check, paid the bill, and stood up. "Take care of yourselves," I said quietly. They didn't even say goodbye. They just sat there, scrolling through their phones, pretending the whole thing hadn't happened. The car ride home was dead silent. My wife didn't say anything, and neither did I. But we didn't need to. There was a calm between us, a shared understanding that I'd done what I had to do. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Watching your children in pain is never easy. Seeing them wrestle with the weight of a difficult situation, that's something no parent ever wants. Their struggle is real. Their burden is heavy. I get that. But that doesn't mean I can carry it for them. They need to learn that. A few weeks after that dinner, the one where they blindsided me again, where I drew the final line, I did something I had been putting off for years. I changed my will. It wasn't a rash decision. It wasn't out of spite. It was clarity. For too long, I had kept them in, Maya, Julian, Adeline, out of habit, out of some lingering hope that the broken pieces could be put back together. But that dinner showed me the truth. They didn't come to heal. They came with a goal. Every conversation, every apology had a price tag attached to it. So I sat down with my lawyer, laid everything out clearly, and had the will updated. I removed all three of them. Everything I owned, my savings, my assets, the house, the insurance, would now go to my wife and our two younger children. They were the ones I was building this life with. They were the ones who stood by me without expectation, without guilt, without manipulation. When I signed the final page and looked at my name, something settled in me. A calmness, a quiet sort of peace. And then, a few months later, I got a call. It was Maya. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. "Dad, Mom passed away last night. We thought you should know." That was all she said. No request. No guilt. Just information. I sat in my study after listening to it, staring out the window for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief either. Just a strange emptiness. She was gone. The woman I'd once loved. The woman who'd betrayed me. The mother of my children. 1,000 memories came rushing back. Not all good. Not all bad. Just pieces of a life that no longer existed. I didn't attend the funeral. I didn't reach out. I had made my peace long ago, and funerals, for me, are about closure. My closure came 15 years earlier, when I walked away from her lies and her double life. That chapter had been sealed shut. I didn't need a casket or a eulogy to remind me of what was already buried. After her death, they tried again. The kids. First it was Maya, then Julian. Even Adeline sent a message, just one line. "We'd like to talk, Dad." But this time, I didn't reply. No more half-steps. No more negotiations of peace that were just veiled requests for more. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't wounded. I had simply moved on. These days, my life is calm. Joyful even. My younger kids are thriving. They bring chaos and laughter to the house, the kind that fills rooms and hearts. My wife and I spend evenings on the porch, sipping tea, watching the sun go down. We plan holidays. We attend school plays and swimming lessons. We dance in the kitchen to music only we enjoy. There's no drama, no guilt, no manipulation, just peace. And for the first time in a long, long while, I finally feel like I'm home. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.